Hello and welcome to the Analytics Show, the podcast of business through the lens of data science. But together, we'll dive into learning and sharing where various industries are heading and how data and analytics is at the heart of shaping business growth and productivity. Let's spark different ways of thinking about data and analytics that is relevant to you and prepare your business for future disruption. I'm your host, Jason Tan. I'm delighted you could make it on this journey with us. Hey guys, to continue to get support tips, techniques, and tools and learn from the expert, hit that subscribe button wherever you are so we can keep in touch and continue our lifelong learning together. So, are you using your company data to its full potential? Take our embedded analytic assessment to find out your score. A leading organization like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google have moved beyond dashboard and embedded data science directly into their daily business operation. With our 3-minute test, you will discover your potential in optimizing customer experience and revenue through embedded analytics. You will gain greater clarity, insight, and advice to embed analytics. Plus, you will receive customized results instantly. Find the link to this assessment in the description of this episode. Hello, Taimoor. Welcome to the Analytics Show podcast. So excited to have you here, talking about the customer experience and most importantly, my favorite industry, marketplace, and of course, how the marketplace is fitting into the pet industry. Welcome, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. The suns are out. The Sydney, it's nice and warm, so I couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier.
That is good. We have a rather warm weather here in Brisbane. In fact, I think today is pretty okay. Not too warm, but
yeah.
Finally winter is over.
Yeah. That's why it all smiles.
I think the American or the European is enjoying their winter now. So let's not rubbing the salt on their warmth too much. But now, doing my research, I read that you do some volunteer work for emergency rescue and repair with the New South Wales State Emergency Services. That is really unique volunteer work. I think it's the first time I see or read someone doing this sort of work. So how did your work with them come about?
I think I got exposed to them probably in 2009 in Western Sydney. So this is where I am. We had a really big storm in my area, and we had like hail the size of like baseballs, like baseball sized hail.
Yeah.
And it was just like smashed up our roof, and we had like these massive like holes in our roof and stuff. We had no idea how to repair it, but these guys were kind of out and about like helping the community. And I was like, oh wow, this is like a really cool organization. What are they all about? And that's when I found out it's like a 99% volunteer organization, right?
Wow.
And it's the largest mobilized volunteer organization that is focused around search and rescue in the Southern Hemisphere. So there's nothing bigger than that. And then, that's, I really liked what they did. And I went up, I called them, and I went up to my local Blacktown chapter. So it's community based. And I was like, I want to sign up, I want to help out, and I want to learn some of the skills that they sell. Also, it's like a bit of a personal thing. I wanted to learn how to use a chainsaw. So I was like, this is a good way to be a badass, right? So
and it's probably a good way not to look too odd in using a chainsaw.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Oh, I love that. And any particular story that have stuck with you throughout these 9 years with the emergency services volunteering?
Yeah, so it's definitely been 9 years. I haven't been on the road for like 9 years. I was a lot more active earlier. But as life gets in the way, that's just how it is. But look, there is a story I love to tell, right? And in 2012, so this was like a few years after I started with the SES, I had done my time, did my trainings. I was like good enough to go out in the field. Again, there was this big storm in 2012, right? And this was in the Blacktown area. And what had happened is a massive trunk of a tree had fallen into a family's house and then kind of like halfway lodged into their living room, right?
Oh, wow.
And it was really interesting, right? Because it was a migrant family, and they had recently come into Australia. They're clearly in distress. And there's a bloody tree in their living room, right? So, but like what I saw around me was like this really cool, like this organization. Like there was power lines were down, but like they were taking care of power. It was raining, but like they had the family outside of the home, and we put them under like a temporary shelter. And I was just thinking to myself, like, as a migrant, what a great experience to Australia, right? Like, because Australians are all about like, we're all about like, community. We're all about like helping each other, having a fair go and stuff. And, these guys got like this great free service, which is like all built by volunteers who like made this home safe after like, 6 or 7 hours, I think it took us. But they had this great experience, and get this, right? So they had 2 children. 3 years later, those two of the children, when they had turned 18, they joined the SES Blacktown, and they're still there, right? Out of that experience. So it was a very relatable experience to me, except, for them, it was a lot more traumatic. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. It was probably a little bit traumatic of like, what country is this? Like, what the hailstorm, like this big of the ice coming down from the sky? But that is good. They had that community experience. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, we are going to talk a little bit more about some of the works you do. I suspect that some of those experience that you were describing to me probably would translate into the work that you do day to day unconsciously. So I'm looking forward to find out. Now, to get things started, tell us a bit about your current role as the Director of Customer Experience at Mad Paws. Did I get it right? I always struggle with that word. My son, his favorite cartoon is Paw Patrol, so I did practice for that.
No, you got it right. It is Mad Paws. Maybe I'll start by like giving a quick intro to what Mad Paws is, right? Yes. So essentially, like, look, I think we used to say that we're like the Airbnb for dogs, right? But I mean that's so like. That's so micro to what we now do, right? Like, I mean, now we've got this like vision and mission to like make pet ownership easier for all of Australians, and that means that we want to be like the end-to-end service provider for pets. So everything from awareness to like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a pet, all the way to unfortunately, when we have to say goodbye to cremation, right? And like in between, you've got like health, you've got exercise, you've got nutrition. So that's what we want to do, and we want to have like a customer lens and experience lens on it. But the marketplace for so how we do this is Mad Paws has the marketplace, which is the Airbnb part, right? Which is where if you want, as a dog owner or a pet owner, you want some services, you can find somebody who's going to take care of your pet for you. We have things like medication. So we've got like pharmacies, over the counter, health supplements. We have a nutrition arm. We have e-commerce, and we've got like massive plans to like keep expanding, right? So, so I mean, it's very big vision. Within that vision is very central to us is the customer, right? Like at the end of the day, without the customer, who do we have? So my role here is essentially like I focus on the marketplace, and I like to put my role as two sides, proactive and reactive. And the customer, I split the customer into proactive and reactive. And reactive side is really the support, the customer service side. So my team within the CX team we house the customer service team, which is made up of individuals in Australia and overseas as well. And we combine to give like a really holistic sort of experience. And we want to ensure that like we're fast, we're efficient, satisfaction is key. And we look after all of our brands. So we don't just look after the Mad Paws marketplace. We look after all the other brands that we have acquired. We support all of them as well. The other side, which is probably the one that you're more interested in, is the sort of the CX, the traditional CX side, which is the proactive. And here I really focus on the pet sitter, right? Which is the supply side of our marketplace. So being a double-sided marketplace, owners and then pet carriers. So I focus on the pet carrier. They're my central customer. And it's really their life cycle that I am here to maximize, all the way from awareness, like I'm thinking of being associated to Mad Paws, all the way to them being like a really star pet carer who's earning like 6 figures on our platform, which is 100% doable, right? Like,
wow.
I want to ensure that transition happens as smoothly, as effortlessly as possible, and with the highest amount of satisfaction. Yeah.
Right. I just want to call that out. 6-figure.
Yeah.
As a pet care operator, that is amazing. That's crazy.
It is pretty crazy, but it's definitely doable. Yeah.
Now, before we move on about you highlight something about really interesting, and I try to build a marketplace in the past without much of a success. So I can't say I speak from an authority, but I certainly do speak from the experience. You spoke about the supply side. Now, one of the things that I learned from that experience is that building marketplace, I just want to call it out there, building marketplace is bloody hard. It's really, really, really hard. And often people were talking about you really need to focusing on just one side of the marketplace to get the things going. In this scenario, in this context, would you say that the supply side is really the one that things to get going, because building up the supply side will attract the buy side?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if your supply isn't there, you're not meeting the need. You're not meeting the core function of your marketplace, right?
Yes.
which is to give the customer what they want, right?
Yes.
But I think for Mad Paws, if you put a Mad Paws lens on it, the supply to us is so crucial, because think about who you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with people, and you're providing a digital service. Your platform is the digital service, and then the actual service is being rendered in the physical realm, not in the digital realm. You know what I mean? It's not like you're downloading a PDF, or like it's you're getting a physical service, and that is done by a human being, and it is done on your family member, right? Like your pet, your goldfish, your dog, your lizard. So focusing on supply quantity to ensure that equation is basically balanced, is super important, to ensure that the person who is searching always has a viable option to go with. And then quality, like, I can't tell you how important for us like quality is. Like it is, we say that if we win the pet sitter, we will win the transaction, because they are the physical culmination of our service, of our product. Yeah.
Wow, that makes sense, because at the end of the day, we as a company, you need to rely on them to provide a quality service, and
Yeah.
to have that providing of a quality service, you want to set him to start in a really good tone, having that really good experience, knowing that this is a place that they can make a living, doing something that they love. That is so spot on.
Exactly. And that's the story that we tell, right? Like, because we want people who do this for a passion, right? Like, our data very clearly we're able to see this behavior in pet sitters just through how many times they render a service, right? So we classify them as sort of like full-time pet sitters, somebody who's doing it part-time, or somebody who's doing it casually, right? Or somebody that like does it once and maybe for one reason or another never comes back, right? That's the one that I'm interested in as well, right? Like, it's like, why did you not come back? So, and there's many factors, but yeah, we want people who at the core of it want to make a difference in the pets' lives. That's it. Yeah.
Now, rating system has been the predominant mechanic in the marketplace over the last decade. Would you say rating system is the key layer to ensure the quality and the experience? Would you say that is your mechanic to build those things?
Nah. Right. I don't want to say this, but like, rating systems are a sham, to be honest. Like, let me give you an example, right? Let me give you.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So,
I love to hear different style of the stuff.
So you get in an Uber, right? You get in an Uber. He or she drives you from one place to another. You have an average experience, right? Like, the minimum is done. You are transported from one location to location B. That is the minimum requirement of your service. What do you rate it? You rate it 5 stars, right? Like, you would only rate it if you had a really bad experience. You would not give it a 5-star, right? And that's basically what we see in our marketplace, and that's why we don't learn anything from it, right? Like, the average rating for our pet sitters is like 4.9, right? Like, and that's like 50,000 pet sitters, right? And that's not to say, now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that our pet sitters are not giving a 4.9 or a 5-star service. What I'm saying is, purely relying on a 5-star rating system is not telling the biggest story. Not telling the complete story. You have to look at performance statistics, right? You have to go deeper to understand. So things for us, we would look at it as, like, we call them universal metrics, right? How fast is a pet sitter replying back to you? Or how often are they replying to you, right? Or, are they leaving your question unanswered for a longer period of time? Or, are you coming back to the platform after the service has been rendered? So we look at like a myriad of metrics, and like, the rating system is like very low in my priority list. Yeah.
Right. Now that we have that context, I presume data has to play a big role in allowing to track those metrics. Question, I suppose the easier question to throw at you is, collecting those data is easy, considering that you have that digital native platform. You are digital native. You build the things from scratch. So collecting those data online, where is platform related, is easy.
Yeah.
What about the offline experience? How that is the hard part, huh? Collecting the data.
Yeah, it is, right? Like, for any offline experience, collecting data on offline experience is hard, right? Like, because it's manual, like, if you, I don't know if you remember, right? Like, when they track how many cars go across an intersection, they used to do it manually with somebody standing there with right? And then after that, they then develop systems where they would put like a line, and when a car would go over it, it would register a pressure difference. So like what's happening is you're trying to change a physical event and attach like a digital data, a one or a zero to it, right? So it's always a big challenge, right? So for us, we still do this, and one of the ways that we do this actually is, now to go back to your last point, is the reviews. So there is a rating system, and then there is a review. Those are two different things, right? A rating is just a score from 1 to 5.
Oh, okay, yes.
A review is somebody has taken the time out of their and effort to write something about the service. So that is a huge place where we look, right? Because we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of reviews, right, on our platform. So this is a great way, so we can analyze using words, and we can then attach different attributes to different words. Then not only that, that's one big way. So we do that on scale, right? It's a scalable way to do it. A more personal one-to-one way is discovery sessions, right? So this is something that was actually brought about by our product team, where they introduced discovery, where we speak to about 5 to 6 customers every week, one-to-one sessions, 30 minutes, and we speak to them purely. We do two things: we either discover something brand new, or we validate one of our assumptions. So that's a one-to-one sort of thing. And another one-to-many sort of approach is kind of like surveys and stuff, so that's how you translate the physical experience into a digital, and you can collect that data as well. NPS is something you're probably quite familiar with as well. So that again is so we do something called a post-service NPS, which is after the service has been rendered. We ask them to rate their experience, and based on that, we get like a digital variant, a digital number for their physical experience, right? So there's different ways that you can do it, and they all kind of have to combine into one place.
Now, there are so many things to unpack in there. Let's do it one by one, if that's
sure.
NPS. I always wonder, what is the best time to deliver the NPS? Like, is it right after the service is concluded, or is it maybe 1 or 2 days after the service is concluded? Is that a theory on that?
Yes, 100%. Like,
oh wow,
100%. I have very strong love-hate relationship with NPS, right? Like, NPS can be very easily skewed and scammed, very easily, right? So I used to work for Gumtree, right, a while ago, and
yes,
to prove to so one of they were quite obsessed with NPS at that stage. To prove to them that NPS has so many fallacies, right? What I did was I just changed the way. I just gave more context to what the numbers mean to the customer, right? Because you know how it's like 1 to 6, 1 to 6, 7 and 8, and then 9 and 10. But to you and me, like, it's like, oh yeah, 7 and 8 is okay, like that's still a pretty good service, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you flipped it around, like, what we started getting is like a huge difference. The NPS went through the roof, right? Like, people are like, oh, you're telling me that you interpret 7 and 8 as a bad result? Let me give you a good result. So within like a month, I turned their NPS to like, plus 80. But I told them that this is useless because A, it was being tracked at the wrong time, right? And B, NPS needs to be done with, like, you can't indicate to the audience what is a good and what is a bad score, other than telling them that 1 is bad and 10 is good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, to give you to answer your question, 100%. Like, what we do is to get over this problem is we measure NPS multiple times, and we measure NPS Not only multiple times within the transaction, but multiple times within the life journey of a customer. So a first time NPS and then a fourth transaction NPS are two very different things. So if you measure NPS with a customer who's transacted with you 10 times versus an NPS, that measurement that you do within the first transaction, they tell you two very different stories. Not only that, from that, you can go very deep and you can ask different types of questions to the customer that has been with you transacted 10 times compared to the question that you would ask them when they have transacted one time. So my advice is measure multiple times within the first transaction, and then measure multiple times within the lifetime of your customer as well.
I certainly pick up something really new. I'm gonna try to apply that to some of the work that we do. You spoke about the review with people actually typing something in. I'm gonna let you in a secret. Generally, if I don't like the services, I would, when I use some of those marketplaces and I am forced to give a review and give a rating, I still give them a 5-star review unless they really do a horrible job. But I would, if I'm not super happy, if I'm okay with the performance, I would just avoid saying something too nasty. I just don't want to necessarily, unless it's super horrible. I don't feel like I want to be the person who destroyed their life. If that makes sense. Do you think that is the case? And that's the first question.
I 100% think that is the case. Like I mentioned in my Uber analogy, right? Like it's like we're just so used to, and we're driven by emotion, right? Like exactly, like oh man, you know, I mean, this person did the job. I don't want to kind of ruin their life, you know, just because they were driving a little bit rough. But like, so I'm still going to give them 5 stars. But I mean, this is I don't know about an ethical question, right, Jason? But like, this is the problem with performance-based feedback loops. If we are scared to give feedback, we will never understand truly like what the quality of our service is, right? So it's like this double-edged sword, right? Like, you know, and it's very interesting because you see within companies, they're all about like, oh, we're all open culture, open feedback culture and stuff like that. But like publicly, it just doesn't exist. That open feedback culture. It just is not real.
It's true. It's true. The second part of that question is to do those review. Obviously, there are still good the element of human reading those reviews to get context. Any chance throwing in natural language processing to process those reviews at scale?
Yeah, 100%. Like, so we kind of do it somewhat manually, right? So like I was saying, so we're able to we basically use a program where we combine certain words and we give them like a sentiment score, and then we then like calculate what the sentiment would be based on this review, right? We do this super manually, but 100%, like I think the evolution of this process is to put some smarts into it, where you know, a program ideally would not only give me sentiment, would not only give me like what is the themes or the theme, but then be able to match those themes to other themes within my other businesses, you know. So it would be really cool to see if there's a reoccurring theme in terms of the written reviews, but not in the marketplace, maybe like in the marketplace and e-commerce. Like, what do we share between the two? So yeah, that's going to come with complexity. We're definitely heading in that direction. Yeah.
That reminded me an example or some of the work that I was doing with a client where we were looking at the review and then we were trying to apply like certain aspect of it. And the aspect that is unusual, is a bit unusual. but it's an important one, which is what is the culture like of the company? What is the ethics like of the company? And so we were trying to figure out like what are those two components from the review. So I think I can see exactly where you're coming from of those things using the so that easily can be done. Now, thank you so much for sharing all of the seller the side of the marketplace with and some of those things. How are the things that you are doing in terms of using the data, using the analytics when it comes to play for the customer experience?
Yeah, look, I think like, sorry, do you want like a use case or?
I think that would be wonderful,
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah, look, I mean, analytics is very crucial to what we do, right? You know, as a pretty mature marketplace, you know, we use it extensively, and it is baked into our process and our decision making process as well. You know, I think one very tangible example for analytics was pricing. So for marketplace, we're a marketplace, but we don't determine pricing, right? It is the prices that are set by the pet sitter or a supply is whatever they want it to be. So they can charge really expensive, they can charge very little. It's totally up to them. What we started seeing is that, you know, naturally, like any market, your pricing will start to sort of like, yes, it fluctuates for a little while, but then eventually it kind of ends up in that bell curve, right? However, what was interesting is pricing varies. So for the sitter, they were not able to combine their singular pricing with demand data, right? So what we decided to do is, you know, in CX for us, customer experiences, one big thing is all about like empowering the customer to make the best decision for themselves. So what we started doing is we started sharing with them that, hey, people in your area are pricing X percentage, you know, higher or X percentage lower. Or, by the way, did you know that during this period in time, demand skyrockets and we see XYZ behavior, right?
Yes. Yes.
So what we did here is we are empowering them to make a better decision based on their pricing. Because why should you, as a great dog walker, undersell yourself? Like, what's the advantage, right? Like, yes, as a business, to me, it is advantageous if you charge more because I earn more. But I'm not driven by that. I'm driven by you having a better experience, you having more pocket in your money and more money in your pocket, so that you can come and return back to my platform, have a really good experience, and then continue to transact on my platform, right? It's like you're trying to hit multiple birds with one stone. So we started doing these we started analyzing all of our pricing. We then did like massive education campaigns to all of our pet sitters. We tested this first, right? Because as you know, that it's very dangerous to play with pricing in a marketplace, right? On a large scale. So when we started this process, I remember all the major states were in lockdown. The only state that was not in lockdown was WA, right? And we were like, perfect. Low population, low price volatility. Let's test here. So we massive education campaigns, and we saw a slight increase in people, you know, increasing their pricing, right? And then we started, again, this is about like how deep does analytics go? We started looking at the results of our education campaigns, and we were trying to understand. Not that many people were interacting with it, or sorry, quite a few people were interacting to it, but not that many were taking an action, right? So to me, that kind of looked like maybe there's too much friction in the process, you know? So then we started automating it, and not automating it, but we started like doing an opt-in model. It's like, hey, click here to increase your prices by 10%. Click here to increase it by 15%. Click here to increase by 20%. Mind you, the CX team, right? Our mantra is we take on little projects. We find problem spaces within the team. We take within the company. We take on projects that we can execute with what resources we have. The team is like 3 people. I'm like a third of the team, right? And we were doing this completely manually, right? It's literally like it's an unbounced page. They click on the button. We register their email address. We make a list of all the people that have clicked yes for 20, yes for 30. We go into the database. We update the the values in the database. Jason, let me tell you this, right? With this, we learned over time. Like I said, we started with WA, right? 300 people. We saw great results, right? All these people increased their prices by like 23%. No drop in conversion, no drop in repeat stats, no drop in like performance, right? They got the same amount of bookings, no drop in the amount of bookings that were coming to them. Cool. Let's go to a different state. Now we try like Queensland, then we tried Victoria, then we tried like all of the eastern seaboard combined. And our latest, we nearly touched 14% of our supply side, active 14% of them increased their pricing by double digits. No drop in conversions, no drop in any kind of performance stats. So all positive. We basically handed this over to our product team with the insights, right? And all the analysis back to, and it's been a huge success to that. Now we have the might of the whole company focusing on making sure that pricing is a core focus for product, you know. So it's like analytics, you know, can play a huge role, and it's not for the big boys in the team, right? I feel like people get scared of the word analytics and they're like, oh, you know, it's only the big teams that utilize it. But it's anyone and everyone can kind of like go in and then, you know, analyze the data. But then it's about like, what do you do with it? You know, that's the part that I love, is like, you know, there's so many use cases for it. There's so much opportunity on the table, right? Yeah.
Hey all, I just want to give a quick shout out about this episode. It's sponsored by the Embedded Analytic Program at DDA. And the Embedded Analytic Program is designed for senior manager and executive in the business team who want to integrate data science into daily business operation and use it to drive customer experience excellence and revenue. And book unlimited strategy session for a full year and start embedding analytics into the business frontline. For more information about this program, please refer to the description of this episode. Now, let's get on back to the interview. I'm so glad that you threw that pricing example in, and I wish I would have learned that long time ago. And speaking from experience, which I highlighted, I built a marketplace that went online for more than a year, but I decided to shut it down. And the reason why I shut it down is because I think that a lot of people, especially the seller side, often perceive that the marketplace is the bargain hunter. Marketplace will drive the price down. And the reason is simple, because as a buyer, I go to the marketplace. I can easily compare multiple service providers. I can easily compare multiple merchants. And it makes no sense that when the item is exactly the same or the service is exactly the same, why would I pay 25% more, right? And while it makes sense, unfortunately it also drives the price down in a cycle where and it will continue to drive the price down. And because of that, I found it so difficult to acquire seller, because the seller were having that sort of experience with other platforms, with other marketplace already. And that was that to me was the fundamental reason where I feel like I couldn't make it work, because the sales side was having that sort of idea deeply planted in their mind. and why I shut it down. But so I find that is really interesting when you were having that sort of a different mechanic and also using different way to build that pricing and build that experience, customer experience that actually turn the other way around. I find it very, very fascinating. And I think there are more people should listen to this this one where pricing is actually going up in the marketplace. So I thought that was really good use cases.
Yeah, I mean, but Jason, like I think we had the luxury of demand being on our side, right? So this is crucial to the like, look, marketplaces, you know this better than I do, but like it's an equation, right? And the equation continuously needs to be balanced, and you need to
Yeah.
feed one side or the other side, right? In this case, like you're never going to get one to one, right? It's just never going to happen. But we just had the luxury for demand, and then we had the propensity to take this risk to be able to test. But 100%, like I think pricing tests should be done regularly, and within controlled environments. The risk is
Yes.
very low. Yeah, the risk is very, very low. Yeah, but the rewards are huge. I mean, if you can pull it off, the rewards are huge. Yeah.
Now let's flip to the other side of the coin. What are the common mistakes that you often see made in the customer experience for the marketplace?
So I think the central person for the marketplace, and this sounds broad, but honestly, not many people do this, but is people we don't take the time to understand the customer, right? Like we make way too many assumptions, right? And the assumptions are that, Airbnb did this, Airtasker did this, Rover did this, so I'm going to do this. Like, sure, there is an element to truth here. I agree. I'm not going to sit here and say that you shouldn't take inspiration from other businesses. 100% you should. But like understanding the needs of your customer is very, very important, right? Understanding your customer, and it's not that difficult. Like you need to proactively go after, like, who are you solving it for? Are you bringing in the right supply? Are you bringing in the supply that can meet the demands of your owners? How do you find that out? Is you find it out through like one-to-one discovery or one-to-many discovery, where you ask them surveys, you ask them questions, you pester them, you pay them money to give you insights. Like you do whatever it can be done to cement who your customer is. Because until then, it's very difficult. Because until then, marketplaces are always in then experimentation mode. They're like, oh, this didn't work. Let's try this. This didn't work. Let's try that. But you can totally learn from your mistakes, right? Just understand who your customer is from before and then cater for them, right? And I think reactively, it's so surprising in 2022 how marketplaces can have bad support. Not even marketplaces, how service providers can have bad support functions. Is like, if it takes weeks to get back to you as a customer, right? If it takes, like, if you call and then you're on the line for like 20 minutes, right? Like you're not gonna come back. I don't know. Like especially if it was like a luxurious, like if it was not a need, you're not gonna come back, right? And you just, as a business, you just spent like up to $150, $200 acquiring this customer who didn't even pay back in the first transaction, and then they're never coming back, right? Why?
Yeah.
Because you didn't have enough customer service people to answer the phone, which is like 101, right? So I think, to me, I'm very biased to like a service-based marketplace like Mad Paws. So, for me, like understanding your customer and then focusing on trust and safety, right? Like I think building that trust up front is super, super important for marketplaces. Like, am I transacting here? Why should I transact here? Like why here and not like somewhere else? Like, and that's, you have to convince your customer. Like, what's that? I say that you have to show capability through credibility, right? Like, and to do that is like, sure, utilize reviews. Tell the people who are visiting your website what you are doing to ensure marketplace quality is being met, to ensure that the supply is going through a rigorous vetting process, to ensure that you are not letting anyone and everyone onto the platform, but you are letting people who are just as passionate about providing you that service as you want them to be. So like, I think like these are two huge areas that are massive focuses for us. And don't get me wrong, like we haven't gotten it right? Like I don't think anyone has, but like it's all about like continuously iterating and trying to get better, right? Like you can never stop understanding your customer, and you can never stop building credibility. It's like, like you have to show, whether it's reviews or whether it's like, testimonials, like different ways of doing it. You have to show it. And I find that surprisingly like missing. Yeah.
One thing that I was gonna highlight, that you spoke about trust, and the biggest problem that any marketplace that face is the market leakage. You have got all of those buyer seller coming in. How do you stop them leak out from the market and then doing the transaction outside? Trust is probably the biggest element that hold them inside to continue to transacting within the marketplace. And I'll give an example, which is, for example, I probably tried to get a painter from the Airbnb. Sorry, not Airbnb. Tasker. I got confused myself. But then next time, whether it's the seller or myself, we'll probably try, hey, great work, thank you so much. I got the other room to paint, but maybe can we do it outside of the ad Tasker so that we can save on the fee, and then I benefit, he benefit, he got more money in the pocket, I pay less, and that is the market leakage. That is happening in all the marketplace. What would you say to solve that problem? Do you think that what you just highlighted, trust, is probably the primary element in the market leakage fixing?
I don't think it is, but it's not the smoking bullet. Sorry, the smoking gun. I don't know, one of the two, right? It's it's not. Yeah. It's not the that you have to. It's like a battle on multiple fronts, right? You have to fight it on multiple fronts, and building trust. So for me, it's like building trust and community, right? Like, so, Tesla fans, people who are fans of Teslas. I hope maybe you, I don't know what you drive, but like, they are very, very passionate about their product, right? Like, right? Like very outwardly passionate about that product. And they've got tight-knit communities, and the question I ask myself is why, right? It's because, right? Yes, they believe in the product, they believe in the mission, right? And that's what we're trying to not build a fanaticism around it, but we're trying to build this like tight-knit community, right? Like where we want all of our pet carers, for us, this is a very big strategy, right? Like where we have to execute is to build this community of pet sitters that feel like that they are making a difference, other than making a global difference or a wider difference, rather than just the one-to-one transaction that they're having, right? Why? Because if you can rally people around your mission, which is to make pet ownership easier, right? This is your whole supply. Like I said before, if you win your pet sitter, you win the transaction. If they believe that Mad Paws, I am part of Mad Paws, who is trying to like get rid of all the kennels, you know, trying to get rid of like animal cruelty, trying to get rid of businesses that are just like, you know, piling dogs on dogs on dogs just to maximize that retail space that they have. You get this sense of community that like shields you, because then the transaction is like, hey, thanks Sarah for looking after my dog. He had a great time. You know, can we make this regular? Do you mind if we just do a cash, and then that way, you know, it'll be cheaper for you, or you'll get more money. And then Sarah turns around and be like, look, you know, thank you for that, but I'd really appreciate if we keep it on the platform, because, you know, like through Mad Paws, I'm building my profile, I'm building my credibility, I'm building my reviews, I'm building my business, I'm getting public liability, you know, and I am part of this Mad Paws ecosystem, like which encourages me to be within its walls. So there's a couple of things I touched on that. Like there's a bit of loyalty that's built in. There's a bit of incentive to stay is very important, right? Like this incentive to stay, you know, is very important. But like this community aspect is super important, right? Like, and it's a very it's tangible, but it's also quite intangible, right? Like it's like, how do you associate a KPI to your community, or like how loyal your community is, or how big your community is, or how active your community is? Like, you know, you can't put like numbers on something which is so human, right? So that's one big area. But the other thing about leakage, right, is leakage happens because of two reasons, and this is very important. Actually, this is a current project of mine, right? I'm just taking it on as a pet project to understand why leakage happens in Mad Paws. And I'm doing this in a very crude fashion, like literally, like I've written a query which looks at people's messages, and then it extracts messages which have the word like cash, money, or something, like anything to do with it. And I just want to sit there and like read hundreds and hundreds of messages just to understand why this happens, right? And it's very clear to me that malice, or somebody who just wants to cut Mad Paws out of the equation, is a small minority. Right? We forget that friction is a huge driver for leakage, humongous driver for leakage. If you cannot make it easier to add a service, to remove a service, to change your price, to edit a booking, to like, you know, whatever the customer may need in that moment in time, for us, it's a huge problem, because we're trying to, like Jason, like 10 years ago, Mad Paws didn't exist, or nobody like Mad Paws existed. How did you take care of your pet? Is it you just paid somebody like $20 to look after your dog, right? And people have been doing this for hundreds of years. So like you just naturally like revert back to, oh, this is too difficult. Here's $20, right? So I didn't lose the whole transaction here, right? But I lost a part of the transaction. Not only did I lose a part of the transaction, but I lost a bit of trust, or the pet sitter lost a bit of trust in the platform, that, hey, my customer had to like pay me cash because they were just not able to, or we were not able to make it happen on the platform.
Now, there are a few things that I want to unpack for the listener there, where how the data and the analytics come into play. You spoke about the removing the friction. You spoke about how easy it is for the seller to list the services. Now, all of those are quality, beautiful data that you are already collecting and helping you to make context of understanding the seller dynamic, and also to tweak the system that you can pass it on for the product guys to tweak the system. You also spoke about the query, which is like analyzing all those messages where it sort of like highlight all the messages that talk about the cache. I know that some of the system that I am using, they just automate or they integrate that bit, and this is automatically remove. I think Facebook actually does it as well. So those things are all the data science, the advanced analytics, where a lot of those things are actually really just data. I think one of the things that people often don't, I like what you were saying, that often people think that the data and the analytics is for the big boy, big company, someone who has got a big team. I actually think that every single thing that we do, it all has got data in there. It's just about thinking them in the context of, okay, how do you store those information? If you can store those information, how can you actually find that? But otherwise, everything is data, and everything can be manipulated with data and the analytics.
Yeah,
Is that the best way to describe it? To layer the data, the analytics into a lot of the works that you already do.
yeah, 100%. Like, I think that's so true, right? Like, there are so many data points that we collect, right? Like, so it becomes about, like, collection, storage,
Yes,
and then
yes,
visualization, right?
yes.
After visualization, there's interpretation. So
Mhm.
I think, collection, 100%, storage, sure, pretty self-explanatory. Visualization is very important, right? And then interpretation. Like, I think this is something that we all need to kind of focus on, especially leaders, business leaders need to
Yes.
focus to enable their teams
Mm.
to not only visualize the data, but then be able to teach them how to interpret it. Because I feel like too many people like hold on to this as a superpower, but it's not really a superpower, right? It's just like, like it's no different to like reading a written report versus like reading analyzing some numbers. Like, this should be shared with everybody, and I think the adoption will come from how easy it is to use, and especially like what you can do with it. I think like if a few people can do something cool with it, it like inspires others to like, oh, let's look into this. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Coming back to this whole idea about the marketplace, I feel my question for you is, do you think in the last 5 years or in the recent year, have you seen like how the customer experience change in the marketplace or overall?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's definitely getting like so much more polished, right? Like,
Yeah.
and look, it's also like different marketplaces, right? Like, have different levels. So you can have unregulated marketplaces like Craigslist to like ultra regulated like Mad Paws, right? Like, and then these experiences over the last 5 years have definitely, like, what I've seen is through the emergence of data, right? And then is you can see data-led thinking and data-led experimentation. And where do you see that? One great example is like surge pricing, right? Like,
Mhm.
how did surge pricing come about? It came
Yeah.
about purely because you're able to see the peaks of demand, and you're able to then basically tweak the dial of how much you can charge until your growth curve starts doing this. Like, that's all they do, right, Jason? Like, it's, you just keep going up until the curve starts doing this, and you're like, okay, that's enough. That's how much the market will pay. So we're starting to see all these complexities, but I think what we're also starting to see is like teams like CX marketing and product are engaging in more and more experimentation, because we are now equipped with the tools, like you're equipped with,
Mm.
hey, if I make this change, what is the possible outcome? What is the risk to me doing this?
Yeah.
And can I localize this risk by doing A/B testing, and like, or ABCD testing? Like, you can localize this risk. So I've definitely seen an improvement in reactive, which is the support side. It's getting way, way better. Like I think live chat support has gotten great. Um, uh, so one side of reactive that people don't talk about, which is actually the knowledge centers that companies
Mm.
are building in, and how are they getting better? They're getting better because they're analyzing the tickets that are coming in, the questions, the queries, and the concerns, and then they are populating articles, right? Like an in-depth articles on, like, how to solve these problems. And they're building out these massive libraries. Like if you look at the Airbnb library, it's beautiful, right? I love it. Like it's a great knowledge center, and we want to emulate something like that. To proactive, which is I was telling you about, which was like all the experimentation works, pricing changes, the volatility, like, complexity is what's coming about, and it's the speed in which you can execute, I think, a solution, um,
Mm.
and then roll it back as well if it didn't work out, which
Mm.
is, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, even, or 10 years ago, it would have taken like teams with massive like business reports, going up the chain, marching up the escalator, handing it over in a golden binder and saying that, we can increase lifetime value by 5%. But, and that decision took like months and months and months and months to come down the chain and to go like give the go ahead. But today,
Yeah.
you and I, I'm very proud that I've been able to empower my teams to like make those decisions based on like a decision matrix, right? Like, did you check for this? Did you check for this? Like, is there risk? Is there no? Have you mitigated risk? Cool, try it. See what happens.
Exactly.
That's what
Exactly.
that's what's happened. Yeah.
Those reports used to sitting on the desk collecting dust, or those dashboard used to build by spending million and million of dollars, but no one actually look at it. Now, coming back to the final, to summarize these, do you have any advice? So, or maybe I'll take a step back. Having worked in the customer experience in various industry, various businesses, what is one thing that you have learned about the customer experience that you wish someone would have told you earlier, um, when you are looking to improve those customer experience overall?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm very passionate about, right? Like I actively want to help also like very young startups build their customer experience function. The misconception, I think, is that it requires high levels of skills and high levels of
Mm.
like complexity and like really expensive programs, and to be able to eke out results. The
Correct.
reality is, I would very much argue, anyone who, like, I'm happy to have this, is that it's very much, I wish that I had told myself 10 years ago to prioritize mindset over skill set.
Mm.
Because if you can like hire the right people who have the right mindset to solve a problem, you know, the amount that you can do with like, 20% of the resources, you can get like 80% of the results. I'll guarantee it, right? It's that extra 20% that companies spend millions and millions of dollars to like try and eke out, right? Because, you know, the difference between a company getting from 0 to a million is the time it takes them to get to 0 to a million, right? Like a lot of people will get there, but hiring the right people and then having that experimentation mindset, like, to me, is, I wish I had told myself this earlier. Like I wish I was like, Taimoor, don't worry about like Tableau. Don't worry about like Looker. Don't worry about these expensive programs. Like you can do this in like a freaking Google Sheet, right? It doesn't require,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Like, and I wish I'd told myself, like, you know, how important it is to build very early feedback loops, right? And like, I think feedback is this word that's used very sparingly. Like everybody uses it, like, oh yeah,
Mm,
we collect feedback, right? But like what that means is just a dialogue box that says, hey, do you have any feedback for us? And then you give them
mm,
a rating. But like I'm talking about like a very structured program to like proactively reach out to customers
mm,
about their experience, reactively reach out to customers about that experience, marry your insights into this journey map, which physically maps out the journey that a customer takes. And it's this living, breathing journey board, which has like pain points that are continuously like being updated based on like your team's insights. Your NPS and your sentiment analysis is live, on this journey map, so that you can view it in real time. And you can make this with like 3 people and like 6 weeks of like dedicated effort, right? Which took me like years and years and years to figure out. Like, like it's just like that. And now I just preach to everybody. It's like, get it down to the basics. Like, tell me what you were doing with nothing, right? And then let's look at that process first, right? Because I guarantee you that process is not maximized. Like, I don't want to hear about like which consultant you paid or something like that. Like, tell me about what your customer service team is giving to your CEO on a monthly basis, right? Like, that's what I'm interested about. And there's so much that can be done in that space, and we continue to not do it. It's,
that is so true, and that is so tropical. And the reason I'm saying that is because I could so relate it to so much that that was this project that we have been building for the last 12 months. And me as an engineer with other team being the engineer or the data guy, we were just building things, and then we just piling on top, piling on top, piling on top, and we think like, oh, this is cool, let's build it. This is cool, let's build it. And it's just sitting there, sitting there. And then we the problem that we started to realize until 2 months ago is that we build all of these features, then we look at the underlying data and to find out, okay, of those thousand and thousand of the people that we have been collecting or be able to get, how many of them register and how many of them log in and how many of them use other feature more than once, twice, or three to get that aha moment. And surprise, surprise, that 50% of the people register, never log in. Can you believe it? How sad it was when we look at the data to realize that. Then to solve that problem, we then bring in someone who has got that user experience mindset to say, how can here's the mandate. How can we solve that 50% of the problem who register and never log in? So, like you say, it doesn't require fancy software, and it doesn't require a massive team. In fact, the user experience person that we brought in, she is only working at the 30% capacity, but it has made a huge impact where she is able to share with us what does that mean from the non-engineer, from the user perspective. What are the things that we have to retweak and solve it, get into the fundamental. The thing is still working exactly the same way. It's just that, using the different angle to see the things rather than being the engineer looking at it who is in it for so long and think that people actually understood what we we think and what we
yeah,
try to tell them.
100%. Yeah. And I guess like it's everything's good in hindsight, right? Like this is what makes you think that like, oh, it's just all about mindset, right? Like so much can be achieved with the basics.
So
Yeah.
true. That is so true. Now, you spoke about your passion about helping the startup. Presumably, that is the best way to reach out to you. Would that be LinkedIn or any other platform to reach out to you?
Yeah, no, I think just probably LinkedIn is the best way. Like I've been talking to a few startups. I help them out like wherever I can. Or I like to, because even I don't know everything, but you never know when somebody's doing something, especially on a startup level, because that's when the passion is super high and the drive and the hunger is super high, right? So you
Yes.
get the most creative solutions to problems usually come out from like when resources are tight, right? So my theory is like, I'll try to help them like get to that stage 6 or 7 out of 10 like way faster than if they had gotten there through trial and error, right? Like so LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out. Always happy to have a conversation with anyone about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Can I give you a plug while you are here before we finish off the podcast?
No, like I don't want to plug, but I definitely want to like plug my theory, right? Like is what I built at Mad Paws, which is the CX team. Is we're kind of non-traditional CX, but we're like a skunk works, right? Like a small agile team within a larger team, which is able to quickly execute solutions, find yes or no, this was what we learned, this is what we should do, this was a bad result, this is a good result, and then hand it off to the business. I wish more companies start adopting this, right? Like this method of working is like put together like small teams that are super nimble, super agile. Essentially it's like a scout, right? Like you send them out before you send your whole army out, right? Is like because you want to know like what's out there, what route should I take. I'm not sure why I am talking about war analogies lately. I think I watched a war movie like 2 days ago, so it's in my head. But like this small agile teams, I think we talk about agile as a process, but we need to be agile in terms of our execution. And I think big businesses can definitely afford this method of working. I've shown great results through it. And yeah, it can be great for other companies and other teams as well.
Absolutely. I can relate to that. I always like to keep the team small. I think it's easier, faster to get things working. Now, here are my 2 final questions that I have got for every single one of my guests. The first one first is, what is your most important first principle?
I think more time in planning, just planning, more time in planning, right? And I think, so I also run an architectural business, right? And one of the big things that we see in the architecture business is we're dealing with people's passions, right? They're building their dream homes. So we have scope creep, right? Which is, hey, we agreed on this, but then the wife is like, no, I want this. And then the kids are like, no, I want this. And then the husband's like, no, I want a third garage. And like, it blows out in terms of like the scope, and then it blows out the budget. And then what happens is we work so hard to provide them this great experience, right? Where their sentiment was going up, satisfaction is going up. And then because of scope creep, everything starts crashing down, right? Like it's like timelines are blown out, prices are blown out. So what we now do is we focus more and more time in that planning stage. And I take the exact same approach with Mad Paws when we execute on projects. So we spend at least a good 30% of that whole phase just in planning, just understanding what are our dependencies, what are our strengths, weaknesses, what can we do, what can't we do?
Mm.
And then really planning out so that we can have a smooth execution. And that saved me many, many times. And I would continue to advocate that. Just spend more time in planning. Not at the like still get to execution. Like don't be a government where you only spend time in planning and you never execute, but like get to execution.
Or don't overspending the time in the meeting to plan the meeting.
Exactly.
What is one book that you have read and thought it would have been better for your younger self to have?
I read this book called The High Growth Handbook, which was I'm forgetting I've got it actually on my shelf somewhere, but it's about the learnings and extracts of like 5 young businesses that all went on to make $100 million. And it was just a summary of their success, what they did, what they didn't do. And it was like, it's like a manual almost, right? Like it's almost like a manual of like, hey, this is what I've done. This is what works. This didn't work. Don't do this, do this. And I loved it, right? Like I'm passionate about building businesses and running teams. So, I continue to advocate for that book. Yeah.
I think I have read it. It's a book by Elliot Gill.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes, he talked about. I think when I read about it, I think the surprising things that I found is that I was expecting tactical strategy. Which is you do A, you do B, you do C.
Yeah.
In fact, it doesn't give you any tactical strategy. No. It talks about that whole different way of thinking, different way of doing of running things, and the perspective of that. I think that is certainly an eye opener for me. When my takeaway was, it's something that I have to read again and again.
Yeah. 100%. Like I think this has been the theme of our conversation, right? Is like how much value there is in the basics. And as companies mature and as teams mature, we forget the basics, right? Because maybe it's, I don't know, like maybe it's like we lack the humility to go back and do the basics, right? Because we're like, hey, 15 years in, I need to focus on the big bad problems, not the baby problems.
Yes, that is a good point. The human nature. I think the human nature is probably the other part that I felt that I have learned more, that is so important, especially the customer experience.
Yeah.
That which we touch on various perspectives. Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Taimoor, for coming on and sharing a lot of those things. I certainly learned so much about the customer experience, the marketplace, and all of those different aspects and the new thing, and also how do you layer in the data and the analytic in enabling, but also discovering. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for the opportunity. It was really cool to have a chat, and it was almost like a banter. I'm always up for a fun, lively conversation.
And time flies, and this is probably one of the longest episodes. I think there was so much fun in there that time flies. I didn't realize I took up so much of your time. But thank you so much again.
No worries. Thanks, Jason.
Hello. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that subscribe button so we can meet again. If you don't, I'll be stuck in an infinite loop. So pull that part by clicking the subscribe and help me out. You can further support us by leaving us a kind review from wherever you are listening. At the end of the year, I will choose a reviewer to send a special gift to, and it might just be you. I look forward to seeing you here next week for a new adventure, if I can find my way out of this endless loop. See ya!